Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Thank you, Jason, for engineering the broadcast today. Everyone all set? Blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
You bet.
Yeah, me too. You know, Dr. Shealy, I've got an apology to make to the class. So, the end of last week, I was all set to do a broadcast about the book and, the unfinished, unpublished, unorganized, not for sale book that I've been writing for a couple years now. And it's just notes about things, the way I do things here at the farm and things I've learned and on all kinds of topics. And I was looking forward to doing it, and I had to run a rerun of me doing a solo broadcast and with topics from the book because I called in sick. And it was no, I don't think anyone's ever called in sick with this reason, but here it is. My uvula, in that little hangy down thing, class, in the back of your throat, became enlarged. And I was choking. I couldn't get, a complete sentence out without gagging. So, I asked Mrs. Finelli to do a quick search on the internet about the uvula. And there's no treatment. There's nothing. All you do is tough it out with lots of water. Dr. Shealy, what experiences have you had in your practice, your medical practice, with the uvula?
Well, I have none. I don't remember anybody ever coming in with a swollen uvula. Interestingly, the chief of ENT, otolaryngology at Duke University used to take the uvula out for some odd reason in certain people, but I never understood why he was doing it.
Well, I can tell you that if your uvula is elongated, you literally will feel like, I imagine this is like being waterboarded. And it is really not pleasant. So probably one of the most pleasant feelings in the world is when your uvula goes back to a normal size. I gotta tell you, it's, you can't talk, you can't swallow, you can't drink. I mean, everything is just, it's difficult to breathe normally. And I wonder if that happens when people are put on a ventilator, that their uvula gets damaged by that and it takes a while to recover from that. Is that possible?
I would think it's possible. Actually, I think what it was used for mostly was people with a severe snoring.
Oh, you mean the uvulectomy?
Yeah,
is that what it's called? A uvulectomy?
Uvulectomy.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense because one of the things that we read that if people snore a lot, they can have an enlarged uvula. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, I wanted to explain that to the class. So, today, Monday, Dr. Norm Shealy, as you know. Tuesday is Rich Sheben. Wednesday, Gwyneth. Thursday is me. Friday, in the book, providing, the creek don't rise. God willing, and the creek don't rise. It'll be me. And Friday, Kathy and then Bert. And Bert will be interviewing me, for the second round. So, Dr. Shealy, I was reading over the weekend an interesting article. I don't have it in front of me, but as usual, you were right again. And this is about gluten and bread. And the article was talking about how people become dizzy. They lose their sense of balance. And it has been traced back to gluten and bread, etc. right again you are, Dr. Shealy. And that, you are way, way, way ahead of the curve on this. Way ahead. For years. As long as I've known you.
Well, I haven't personally eaten bread, I think 13, 14 years. And never plan on eating it again.
Well, yeah. And so I got an image of a label of white bread. I don't have it in front of me right now, but, and it says enhanced or enriched. And so I started reading some of the ingredients that it's enriched with. They're unpronounceable words.
And my grandfather used to call it junk.
Well, he was right.
I'm talking about 80 years ago.
Well, my grandmother used to make an Italian loaf of bread. And it was like a dome. And so it was, symmetrical in every respect as you look down on it. And it was a dome, and she would knead it, and she would put it on, let it rise, and she'd put it in the oven. And it was hard. It wasn't hard, but on the outside, the crust was really hard, and the inside was great. It was absolutely delicious. And I remember that in the 50s. And it was almost like dessert. Bread with, that bread toasted with some butter on it was just phenomenal. And every once in a while you see that, but it's like, $6 for half a loaf now. But is that the same ingredients that we would use to make bread, with today? Or is that?
Well, I honestly don't know. The worst thing, in my opinion, about bread today is not the gluten even, or the so-called enriched junk. It is Roundup.
Mm-hmm.
The wheat has been triple dosed with Roundup poison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's in the air, it's in the water, it's in the rain, and it's, how do you get around it? And
well,
I guess the answer is,
you'd have to live in a greenhouse with filtered air.
Yeah, right. And that's what our government has allowed to happen to us by corrupt corporations.
By corrupt government.
Yeah, corrupt government, corrupt corporations. Dr. Shealy, how do you feel about garlic? Back in the 1950s and 60s, as I mentioned before, my mom used to be a fan of Dr. Carlton Fredericks, PhD, from Fairleigh Dickinson University. He used to have a radio program on out of New York City, and it would travel hundreds and hundreds of miles, so we were able to get it. And she would listen to Dr. Carlton Fredericks, and he talked about garlic being good for you and how you should have garlic, daily. What are your thoughts about that?
I agree with him. Unfortunately, I'm sort of, cooking and living by myself. I find it a little bit more trouble than using onion.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, here's what we do.
Like it.
All right. Well, onions, we buy them fresh, like 10-pound bag or so. And we'll peel one at a time, keep them cool and dry, and they last quite a while. And we'll put them in a Rubbermaid container. And we use the smallest container that they'll fit in. So if we're going to use an onion, let's say half of it, we'll put the other half in the refrigerator. And if we need to take some slices off that, we'll take some slices off that. So it keeps several days. And so we have onions, or an onion or parts of an onion in the refrigerator almost at all times. And it's great. And so we use it daily. And I've been trying to use more onions rather than the correct amount. So for example, if I were going to make an omelet, I would cut more onions than, if I remember in the days of restaurants many, many years ago, if you had an omelet, you have like a half a teaspoon of chopped, peppers, green peppers, half a teaspoon or less of onions. And I would probably put in 1.5 teaspoons now of onions just to get, more onion in me. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing eating onions?
No, onion's very good. It's not quite as strong as garlic in either flavor or health benefit, but it's good.
Okay. My thought was it's got to be good for me, and I probably ought to eat more than whatever I have been eating. But as far as garlic, we have, and it's harder to get fresh garlic because we don't go shopping very much. And so I've been buying garlic, I guess they're called caplets. And it's 1,250 milligrams of garlic bulb equivalent in these caplets. And I take a couple of those a day. I spread them out. And what I found out, and I believe this is true, but I may be wrong, but it seems with me that if I take garlic, my blood pressure comes down about 10 points. Does that make sense? Or
yes, absolutely. Now, Vince, I have raised something called elephant garlic for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
It is 2 to 4 times the size of regular garlic. And it grows very easily. I mean, one bulb will produce a big garlic thing that's maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches in diameter.
Yeah, it's the size of a golf ball at least.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, at least. And we have it growing in buckets in our backyard. Well, not in the backyard, on our veranda, if you want to call it that. So you walk out the kitchen class, and there are these 20-gallon buckets. And they originally were used for, they're called lick, L-I-C-K, tub, T-U-B, lick tubs. And they're protein supplements for the cows to be fed in the winter when, the vegetation's not green. They're not getting as much protein. They're eating dried grass, which is hay. So they're getting that, but they're not getting all the protein. So we supplement their diet with these lick tubs. And when we're done with them, we have all these lick tubs. So over, 15 years of lick tubs, we have a bunch of them. So we fill them with topsoil. We amend it with peat moss and lime and compost, and we make a nice mixture of loamy soil, and we put garlic, we plant garlic in there. So we've got these, and we separate what we grow. We've got tomatoes in one lick tub, we've got carrots in another one, etc., and garlic and onions in other ones. And it works out really, really well. So class, you might want to try that. And it's larger buckets than, 5-gallon bucket. It's, once you set them down, you fill them with soil, they're not going to move too easily because it's going to weigh a couple 100 pounds. But it works for us. We also drill 1/4-inch holes, like let's say 4 or 6 1/4-inch holes, about 1 inch off the bottom, so that excess water drains out of these lick tubs while we're, planting. Have you tried that, Dr. Shealy?
I have not. No, I've only used raised rows in my garden.
Okay. Well, raised bed gardening is great. It really, and, makes it, great for watering. But, we find that we just don't have the time to tend the garden as much as we'd like to. And so what we do is, we have a raised garden, but we don't have, raised rows that we're growing in. Okay. So, Dr. Shealy, if you were planting a garden, what would you add to your garden to make sure that you have enough nutrition coming out of the food, the produce from your garden? Do you have any thoughts on extra additives?
Well, I like compost. I compost a lot of stuff, including manure and vegetables and all the stuff from the kitchen.
Eggshells.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we put eggshells in. Okay, Dr. Shealy's with us. And lime, yeah. And we use high magnesium lime in our garden, really high magnesium lime. We'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. Website is normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, I said to one of the boys yesterday, actually I said to the whole family, we were in the kitchen, and I said, I remember when you guys used to be nice to me. Now, it was a long time ago, but I still remember when you guys used to be nice to me. And the reason I said that was because one of the boys said, "What's up with Dad? What's up?" He keeps saying egg, egg, egg. And what our son didn't see was on the other side of the kitchen. I was talking to the dog, teaching her what an egg is. And I scrambled up some eggs, and I was feeding it to her very slowly. And I was saying egg, egg, egg. And I wanted to teach our dog, actually all of our dogs, what eggs are, scrambled eggs, so they would know that, if they weren't interested in eating their dog food, that, okay, I got it. We'll put some eggs in it. Egg. And they get all excited. Dr. Shealy, When you feed dogs, do you add additional nutritional foods to the dog food? Do you scramble eggs or, you know?
Yes, mainly what I do and have done for many, many years is I buy 10 pounds of chicken thighs and or legs, and I cook those all day in a big, that 10 pounds in a great big pot of water, and I take the meat off the bones and put it in. That will make me about 3 gallons of chicken broth and meat, and I give them a little dose of that in every meal.
Okay, so is this the equivalent of like a stock pot, putting it all in, adding some non-fluoridated, chlorinated water, and just, you know, bringing it to a boil and then simmering it? Is that it?
Exactly.
Okay, and no spices or anything, just the chicken.
Yeah.
So they get.
I sometimes put a little salt in. Most of the time, I don't even remember to do that.
Okay, so this is skin, everything. They get everything except the bones.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So it's kind of a slurry, and they don't mind the way it looks, I guess.
No, they just like the taste.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do that with eggs. We have so many eggs here. And we have more eggs than
at the moment, by the way.
What was that? I didn't hear you.
Which I am enjoying at the moment. Thank you.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Okay. So, what did you think of those brown eggs? Those are pretty much free range eggs that we have, Dr. Shealy.
Oh yeah. Well, I strongly prefer always have brown eggs and range fed, of course.
Okay. Well, that's what we have, and our chickens run around all over around the house where they feel it's safe enough, and they venture out a little bit, but they scratch through the leaves. And it's really interesting. If they see us with a shovel, or if they see us moving a piece of equipment, they run right over, all of them. They communicate pretty well. They run over, and they know that if we're going to move a piece of equipment, the bare dirt under that piece of equipment, because the grass, you know, can't grow there because the equipment's sitting on, they know that there are going to be worms there, and they just love it, and they race over, and they you know, have delight with eating those worms. But they eat bugs and grasshoppers, and I guess sometimes they eat ticks too. And so they actually earn their own keep. And I was thinking, I was talking with Gwyneth Isaacs in Australia, that if you had to be a farm animal, the one you do not want to be is a chicken. Because if you have to lay an egg a day, it's like, you ought to hear those. You can hear them for 100 feet while they're, you know, I don't know if they're screaming or what, but it must be really uncomfortable laying an egg, and they lay one every day.
Or maybe they're just exclaiming how good I am.
That's what our rooster does. Our rooster puffs up his chest, and he's delighted with all of his lady friends. So we've talked about garlic, and so I eat the equivalent of, probably more than a clove of garlic, a section of garlic a day. Do you think it's possible to eat too much garlic?
Well, it might make you, you know, have a pretty strong sulfur smell, but other than that, I don't think so.
Well, you know, sometimes having fewer friends is better. Just keep the good ones. You don't need the don't need the Klingons. We'll be right back with Dr. Shealy. Back to the as usual department. Dr. Shealy hit the nail on the head many, many years ago. So here is the article that I was reading, Daily Mail, over the weekend. Headline: dizzy spells, clumsiness, and falls could be a warning sign that your brain is being damaged by eating bread. End quote. The headline below that says, doctors say difficulties can be due to a reaction to gluten, which is found in bread. condition, gluten ataxia, ATAXIA, occurs when the immune system attacks part of the brain. Patients can suffer stroke-like symptoms such as difficulty talking and walking. And so this symptom, or the symptoms of the bread damaging the brain is affecting millions of people in Great Britain. And so doctors say that, well, some of these symptoms could be cancer or stroke or blood pressure fluctuations and infections, but they can be ruled out for many people, and the remedy seems to be elusive. They can't figure it out. And it seems that the answer is simple. The diet. So some doctors are saying it's gluten. It's the protein found in bread and pasta and cereal. So, what they're saying is that in severe cases, patients, can even be paralyzed from the continuation of the consumption of gluten because it causes the immune system to go haywire and it attacks part of the brain. So the answer is no gluten, according to this article. Dr. Shealy, you've been saying that.
Yep.
Have you found...
Reality is here.
Yeah. And so we are being poisoned by probably the number one consumable in we'll call it the quote-unquote food department of a store. So, for example, in the good old days, if you saw a commercial on a video of McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, any of these companies that serve food, it's usually packaged in a piece of bread. And Americans are so used to the convenience of bread that I don't think they can get off it, Dr. Shealy. I think they're stuck with it because they don't want to get off it.
Well, there's always that whole thing called willpower. Mm-hmm. I made a decision 14 years ago to stop eating bread, and I never gave it up. I've never given up that decision, and really, I didn't suffer from it. In the long run, haven't missed it at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you feel about, let's say you're going to have a hamburger.
Well, I don't mind a hamburger without the burger.
That's what without the bread, you mean?
Yeah, well, I call the ham the meat.
Okay. Okay.
But anyway, no, the bun is junk.
So what I was going to say is, what about a hamburger, that beef patty with everything else you'd want to have on it and wrap it in lettuce? Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay. What about corn, I don't know, those flat corn tortillas? Yeah.
Well, they're better than bread most of the time.
Okay. But we still have to worry about the GMO corn, right?
Yeah. And the artificial fructose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is in ketchup. And
almost every other product in a jar in the grocery store.
Like pickles and ketchup and relish and yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I just want to share this with you, that you're right on the money again. And so what do we do? What do we have for breakfast? Can we have oatmeal?
Yes. Now, when I cook oatmeal, I beat into it an egg or two and some cheese.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like cheddar cheese?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Extra sharp cheddar cheese. It's my favorite.
Right. Mine too. Along with provolone.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the others. But yeah, okay, I if it's going to be cheddar, it's got to be extra sharp for me. Extra sharp. Mm-hmm. Okay, so oatmeal with an egg in there and some cheese. What else can we have for breakfast that will help us avoid this dizziness, avoid these blood pressure spikes, avoid the confusion, etc., that we get from poisoning ourselves with gluten?
Well, basically, for your information, my breakfast consists of slush in which I mix 100 grams of protein and the equivalent of 26 servings of fruits and vegetables and all of my multivitamins, etc. And then I drink about 2/3 of that for breakfast and the other third for lunch.
Okay. So this article that I was reading says that people who have removed gluten from their diet, they're here's what it says: 80% of the cases have dramatically reduced, if not eliminated, the problem of being unsteady on their feet, their balance, dizziness, slurred speech, etc. So it seems like all they had to do, they only had one job, and that was to get rid of gluten in their diet. And those that did, 80% of them were fixed. So there you have it, class. We're poisoning ourselves with toothpaste. We're poisoning ourselves with the city water. We're poisoning ourselves with most of the products that are in the extruded part of the supermarket. And maybe it's a darn good thing that restaurants are closing, because that's what they serve. They serve things.
Well, if they depended on me, they'd all closed years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I remember going to the Olive Garden many, many years ago, and the waiter came by and said, "So how does it taste?" That's all they want to know. Did it taste good? I mean, did we put the right blend of chemicals in there to make it taste good? And my mom used to say, my mom did not like going out to eat, and she would say, when I go out to eat, I get sick after I go out to eat. And I never understood that. Well, now I do, because it's designed not to be healthy. It's designed to taste good, to get you to, get addicted to it. So you keep coming back and spend more and more and more money. But,
my favorite statement is I'd rather cook for 30 people than go out to eat.
Yeah. I agree with that. Dr. Shealy, Mrs. Finelli asked me, she was, reading, we have a computer in the kitchen class. And, sometimes when we're working on a vehicle in the shop, we'll run into the kitchen, wash our hands and, check the computer, do some research. And so a computer in the kitchen is kind of a handy thing for us. And, we all use it. And she was reading, an article, and she said that, in this article, it said 1 egg per day can increase the risk of diabetes. What are your thoughts about that? That was kind of surprising to me.
I find that stupid and beyond belief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was kind of shocked at that. So, since our brain isn't it mostly cholesterol, Dr. Shealy?
Yep.
So don't we need cholesterol?
We can't live without it.
And so how do we balance cholesterol?
Well, my latest blood cholesterol, to my shock, was 131. I've never been below 150 before, but for some reason, whatever I'm doing has really taken it way down. In fact, I started adding 2 tablespoons of coconut oil every morning to be sure I get some kind of fat.
What about avocado oil? Do you like that?
I love it. The problem, and avocado oil I like. I love avocados, but they're too much trouble to cut open and peel for me. I won't buy them in the store.
Well, and what we find as if our son bought some at Aldi, and they were in a bag, and he thought, well, if they're in a bag and there's 6 of them or 5 of them in a bag, they're probably handled less than the ones that are just loose. And they're all banged up and bruised, before we got them, so they're all not edible. So, but I do like the avocado, but it's a really tiny meal. I just have half of one at a time rather than a whole one. And the only thing that I put on an avocado would be a little bit of salt, just a little bit of pink salt, and a little bit of fresh ground multicolored pepper, and that would be green, red, white, and black peppercorns in a grinder, and I just grind it on, and that's the way I would eat it. Is that about the right amount, or is that too much or not enough?
No, No, I think a whole avocado is fine.
Okay.
But
okay.
I don't have it very often because I just don't like to try to get them out of the peeling.
Mm-hmm. My mom used to eat avocados, and first I thought they were not very pleasant to even look at, but I became accustomed to them, so let's see. I've got what is the difference between Armour thyroid and the synthetic thyroid in terms of why is it that some people are prescribed the synthetic thyroid medicine, if you want to call it that, versus Armour?
Vast majority of MDs prescribe levothyroxine as synthetic thyroid. It's not nearly as good as Armour's.
And what do we know why?
Well, artificial is artificial.
Okay. And so do we know what Armour thyroid is made out of?
Yeah, pig. Armour gets it out of the pigs they use in making their ham and other meat products.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's been around for, probably almost 100 years.
Okay. And so here's another question. So for those who are on either levothyroxine or Armour thyroid medication, what about the taking iodine as a supplement? Is that overdoing it? Is that...
You don't want to take too much.
Okay.
You need 1,500 micrograms, 1.5 milligrams a day. You do not need more than that. When you take too much more than that, it actually blocks the thyroid from taking it up.
Okay, so a person who is on Armour thyroid or synthetic thyroid meds should consider taking an additional iodine as a supplement, and that would be 1,500 micrograms or 1.5 milligrams per day.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And how do you know if you're taking too much?
Well, it won't, except it makes you hypothyroid, basically.
It'll make you back to hypothyroid?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. We'll be right back. And class, if you'd like to call in, 866-582-9933. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, you've recommended to our class and to me individually that I consume and our class consumes lecithin granules. And so I've got a can of lecithin granules. It's the size of a coffee can. And, for those who don't like to taste, things that, are good for you that don't taste that great, these lecithin granules, I add it to yogurt, stir it in there, and it makes it better. It's really great. But what is lecithin? What actually is the composition of lecithin?
Well, it does lower cholesterol better than almost anything else except trimethylglycine. And it includes the makings for acetylcholine, so it's good for memory as well.
Okay. And is it a natural product?
Yes.
Okay. And can you take too much of it?
Well, I don't know. I suppose anything you could eat too much of, I suppose. My recommendation is for the average person, 2 rounded tablespoons twice a day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's about what I'm taking. And I actually find that it's fine with me. Actually, even better to add more in terms of taste. So when I try something, I try less rather than, the recommended amount, just to make sure that, I don't have an adverse reaction. So let's say that the dose is 1 unit. I might take a quarter of one and try that and say, well, that's okay. Let's go to a half. Let's go to 3/4. Let's go to 1. Well, I find that with the lecithin granules, they are delightful with yogurt. And so I just stir it in. So I've been actually taking 4 teaspoons, and I don't know how that exactly relates to 2 tablespoons, but 4 teaspoons twice a day. Is that close enough?
Well, 4 teaspoons would be 1 1/4 or 1 1/3 tablespoons.
Okay, so I got to up it. Okay. All right.
Yep.
And how long does it take to start seeing the results of reduced cholesterol with the use of lecithin granules?
A month to 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you mentioned TMG.
Yes,
and
trimethylglycine.
Right. Why is that even better than lecithin? What does that do? Because that is a white powder.
Yeah, it does lower cholesterol. You know, it just there's excellent medical studies showing that it helps. I always recommend if people who up at 250 or above cholesterol that they add both lecithin and TMG. Mm-hmm. And I would say 90% of the time, if they'll do it, they're going to be okay with it a month or 6 weeks.
And that should bring their cholesterol, if they're at 250, what would it bring it down to if they do that?
And 190 to 195, yep.
Okay. Well, you know, the TMG, it comes with a little scoop in the jar, and it does, you add it to water, like a glass of water, has no taste, no odor, you don't even know it's in there.
Right. Now, I get it as big tablets. They're almost the size of the distal. They're bigger than the distal little finger. But it's very, very soft, and I chew them.
Okay. That seems like a great way to go as well. Okay. So I was just wondering, and do you take that together? Do you take the TMG?
At the same time, yeah.
Okay. All right. And what else? You recommended for me beta-glucan. What does that do?
Well, that enhances immune function.
Ah, okay. And I noticed that when I take your youth formula, which is your vitamin C plus MSM, 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C and 1,000 milligrams of MSM combined into one capsule, and it also has molybdenum, 60 micrograms of molybdenum in your youth formula. I find that my inflammation goes way, way, way down. Why is that, Dr. Shealy? There's no question about it. It works.
Well, it is anti-inflammatory, and remember that youth formula raises your DHEA, the anti-stress hormone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about the combination of your youth formula with turmeric/curcumin?
Oh, yeah, every morning I actually just take a heaping teaspoon of plain old turmeric.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a feel for how many milligrams that would be?
Well, it should be about 5 grams per teaspoon.
5 grams. So 5,000 milligrams. Okay.
Right.
Because I'm trying to think. I'm trying to find on this label here how many. So I'm not taking that. 500. I'm just taking 500 milligrams 3 times a day. So I'm taking a little less than a third of what you're taking. Should I up it?
Well, it's good for you. It's anti-inflammatory. No negative effects that I know of.
All right. Let's talk a little bit more about this when we come back. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us. NormShealy.com. Norm, as in Norman, Shealy, SHEALY.com. Y'all blessed? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us. And Dr. Shealy, I was reading an article about turmeric. And it says that how this spice, turmeric, along with chamomile tea and pomegranate, is used to fight COVID-19. So it looks like there's some old-fashioned remedies that are being brought out again to fight the disease by boosting the immune system. Your thoughts about that?
Well, it's interesting. I actually use pomegranate powder in my slush in the morning. I think pomegranate is one of the great immune boosters.
Okay, and what I've been reading is that the coloring of these fruits, the phytochemicals, if you will, those are the components that give fruit and vegetables and spices and herbs their colors and their flavors. So it's been shown over decades that these spices and vegetables and herbs and fruit that are rich in phytochemicals help the digestive system as well. So it seems to me, just intuitively, that improving the digestive system would improve our ability to fight off disease by improving our immune system. Is that the way it works?
The gut is actually stronger than the brain in many respects, especially in relation to the immune system.
And over the years, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so, you've mentioned that, the more colorful, the darker the onions, they're more red, the onions, rather than, white onions, better for you. The darker the lettuces, the more, purple the lettuce, rather than just light green, the better for you. The more colorful, the darker the colors, the better for you. And is that because of the phytochemicals?
Yes.
Okay. And so does that pertain to fruit as well? Darker
Absolutely.
fruits?
Fruit, vegetables, everything.
Okay. So for example, an orange is a deeper color than, let's say, a lemon.
Right.
Right? Is it? So an orange would be better for us. Just from that.
Better.
Right, because that's even darker. Okay. All right. Let's see. We've got Lee in Ohio. Welcome. You're on with Dr. Norm Shealy.
Hello, gentlemen. Dr. Shealy, I got a question for you, and I'd like to ask Mr. Vince a question also. But with the vitamin D, I got 2,000 units. Can I double up or triple up on that to make that 50,000 units once a week?
Basically, if you weigh 140 pounds or more, you ideally need 10,000 units a day. Good.
Let's see, and that's about, I'm really close to that, 140, 145, maybe 50, I don't know. I've been suffering with some chronic pain for like decades, and when it started, I didn't even know there was such a term as chronic pain, and I tend to think it's a gut issue, but it was a multiple thing, either bowel movement, or bladder, and you take a 110-year-old person, wrinkled skin. Well, that's kind of how my stomach was for about a decade, and that I tend to think was just urine, blockage, backup, something, because I was going all the time and hurting and just, past kidney stones and all that kind of stuff. Can't figure out what it is, and this gut thing that you're talking about being, stronger than the brain for fighting. I'm thinking, I wonder what it is. And I can't really do anything because, this has put me in, I live a life of poverty. Speaking of which, this phone may go dead because I have a prepaid phone. But anyhow, when the minutes expire, it's the end of call. So, is there anything, I got turmeric and I've, probably still got 4 pounds, but I just stopped taking it because, everything turns yellow, my clothes.
Well, the color doesn't matter, the urine. But the important thing is, have you had a rectal exam?
Have not.
Well, I strongly recommend you see your family doc. Let him or her put a finger up and feel your prostate. It sounds to me as though you may well have benign prostatic hypertrophy. Now, you do not want to go near an average urologist. The average urologist sucks beyond belief. You want to find someone who does green laser. If you have a greatly enlarged prostate, you need green laser. Green laser is the most wonderful thing ever invented in urology, and the average urologist doesn't use it.
Is that the color green laser, like a pointer, green laser?
Yeah, but it goes. They put a catheter in, or put a probe into the prostate, the bladder above the prostate, They actually dissolve the prostate. It's a phenomenal procedure compared to the old TUR.
Good. And the word is called green laser, right, Vince?
Yes, green laser. So don't even go near a urologist unless they use green laser.
Good. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that encouragement, because, I needed to hear it from somebody who knows. And, I've been wanting to go for the last, I think, 5 or 7 years, and I just haven't. It's out of my budget to even get there. But anyhow, can I ask Vince a question too, Dr. Shealy? A few questions. Sorry to Dr. Shealy.
Go ahead.
Mr. Vince. One of the things that I've been wanting to ask Rich on, because he lives in cold country, is how do you get warm without, what can I do to generate heat? Obviously, I'm not going to be burning propane. That ain't going to happen. But, Rich has been busy on his agenda for a while, and it's like, I better not call him right now because he ain't taking calls. So
well, I'll tell you what.
I get warm cold country, my feet are just like, ouch.
Well, that might be a medical question. Dr. Shealy, is that a circulatory issue?
It can be, but let's face it, everything affects everything. Circulation, immune system, all are intertwined.
Lee, what is the temperature of your home when you feel cold?
Probably 40.
Well, I think
he's hyperthyroid.
I think we know I know what the cause is.
Yeah.
Now, are you serious? It's 40?
Yes.
Well, and you're in Ohio, right? Right now it's 29 degrees outside here in Missouri, or was, an hour ago.
And a little bit of, electric, I'm able to stay here with, I don't have to pay anything, but I got free electricity, and that's kind of where I'm at. I can't afford propane, that's for sure. But, I'd love to, install a wood burner, but that ain't going to happen right away. It just isn't going to happen. I mean, there's different ways of generating heat, and I'm kind of thinking, because I heard you talk about that solar thing last week, and I thought, man, that's such a detailed answer. You got to have an answer. Hey, you can light a fire like this, something.
Well, I can give you some quick answers. One thing, if you have a fireplace and you just build a fire, the way it was done in the 1700s and 1800s, you can have a net loss. You'll lose about 10% by running a fireplace. If you look at the whole house, let's say you have a fireplace in one room, like say a living room, the rest of the house is going to be really cold because air will come in, cold air will come in from the outside to feed the fire. So your house will have a net loss of about 10%. So that doesn't really work too well. So you need to have, if you're going to have a fire in the fireplace, you need to have what's called a heatilator or a Ben Franklin stove inside an airtight stove, if you will. And that works pretty well. But you won't believe, if you try to heat your house with wood, how much wood you'll be using. We have, I'm trying to think, probably close to 40,000 pounds of wood dried and seasoned at the ready to heat our house. Now, our house is really, really well insulated. So what I'm saying is, no matter how much wood you think you'll use to heat your house, it's way more than that. Way more. A pickup truck heaped up with dried hardwood might last a week. Might. So, it's really easy to underestimate how much wood you're going to burn. Now, one of the most efficient heating systems would be natural gas or propane with a hang-on-the-wall type heater. You're going to get well over 90% efficiency. But you will have to have fresh air entering, the house so that you don't poison yourself with carbon monoxide. So propane is pretty good. A heat pump is another good way. But heat pumps never really get you warm. They'll heat the house, the air, but you won't really feel warm with the heat pump. So what we do is we heat with wood, and all summer long we're looking for, limbs that fall down. But we have 120 acres of trees that fall down on our farm. So half of our farm is woods and the other half is pasture. So we get literally free wood, except for the cutting, splitting, and hauling. I don't know if Rich is going to have a better answer than that. He might. He has a wood stove in his kitchen, and it's a pretty expensive wood stove. It's built to last generations. And so what he does is he heats with his wood stove in his kitchen. He has a cabin, and it's mostly open space, and the kitchen downstairs has this wood stove in it, and he heats the whole cabin, and he uses it for cooking, and he heats his hot water with it. So, but he burns a lot of wood too. So I don't know an answer other than that. You know, the easiest way to do it, of course, is with the thermostat. You just turn the thermostat to where you want it,
yes,
and everything's good. You just have to pay for it. And we're not willing to do that. We're not willing to pay $400 a month for heating. We're not willing to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why we use an outdoor wood furnace. And it literally is a furnace.
Question?
Sure.
Mr. Vince, and seeing how you mentioned cars, I think I'd like to ask you a car question. The old Buick, say 92, 94, I don't really remember. Did they have an electrical problem in the ignition switch?
I don't know. You know, believe it or not, Buick is not something that I work on very often.
Okay.
But when you talk about an electrical an ignition switch, what's the problem? What's it doing?
Like fire, smoke, let's just say smoke, and I turned it off, disconnected the battery, and walked away about 10 years ago, said, okay, something's wrong. You know, I mean, I noticed smoke. And I think it was, the ignition switch was going to catch on fire. Or, I started seeing smoke, and I just disconnected the battery.
Okay, so that smoke is obviously, as you're describing it, is the insulation is burning. And the reason the insulation is burning is because there is too much current going through the wire. So could it be the ignition switch? I don't know. Could it be two wires that have too much current going through them? Yeah, it sure sounds like it to me. So it sounds like you're going to have to trace the wiring. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us, and I just looked up a 1990 Buick LeSabre ignition switch, and the price is between roughly $9 and you can spend more than that. You can spend $35, $34 for it on the internet. There is a problem with that switch. It's a semi-common problem. And if you see smoke, it is generally too much current going through the wiring or across the connection, meaning a switch is arcing. So that could be very well the problem, and it's an roughly easy fix to do. And you can find a video on, let's say YouTube about how to replace your ignition switch. So you might want to do that. I wouldn't throw a car away just because a little smoke came out from under the dashboard. And on Thursday, I'll be talking, when I talk about tips for my book, I have a few things written down in it about trailers and what's happening with, utility trailers and how the parts are from communist China and how they're substandard and problems that I've seen and how they're unsafe in many ways. And I'm going to be delineating exactly what I mean by that on Thursday. So, Dr. Shealy, we heard it during the news a couple segments ago that 60% of Americans are willing to trust the COVID-19 vaccine. And the government is telling us that, quote, all indications are this is an extremely safe vaccine, end quote. That's the latest information from the Ministry of Propaganda.
If you trust the government, you're open to death. Period. Yeah. In report on anything.
Okay.
I don't trust the government to tell me the time of day.
Right. No, I agree with that. So there are people who are absolutely excited that there is a vaccine. They think it's a panacea. They believe that they're going to get the vaccine, then they go out and play, and everything's going to be just great. Do you think that's really the case? That this is a panacea?
It is stupid, ignorant, and unwise.
Okay. I've been reading about people who actually come down with this. Some people say, it was no big deal. It's just like the cold. Other people, the long haulers, LONGHAULERS, meaning people who suffer with this virus for 6 months or a year or so, brain damage, organ failure, memory loss, even teeth falling out. Are you reading the same kinds of things, Dr. Shealy? Teeth falling out as a result of COVID-19?
Yeah, you can read anything you want or don't want. Mm-hmm. It's all WHIALE feces.
So what we're saying is that it's almost impossible to believe anything. One of the things that Dr. Shealy, I've recommended for our class, actually assigned homework. There was a television series during the 1960s, and it was called Combat, COMBAT, exclamation point. And it was about a squad of guys who, toward the end of World War II, were in their infantry, and they are in France toward the end of the war. And it shows their lives, and it shows the horrors of war. It shows the interpersonal conflicts. It shows heroism and cowardice. It shows everything you could possibly want to learn about war. And it's an anti-war series. Whether it was promoted as anti-war, it was anti-war. War is just crazy. A bunch of guys going against a bunch of other guys with guns and rifles, pistols, shotguns, revolvers, cannons, mortars, hand grenades, bombs dropped aerially. It's just crazy. All because some egotistical heads of countries decide they want more. Well, there was something that was said, and I've assigned this as homework, required homework, because I believe it's that important. There's so many lessons in this series, Combat. One of the characters is Sergeant Saunders. He's just a sergeant of an infantry squad. And he says, scuttlebutt, don't believe scuttlebutt. Only believe what you see with your own two eyes, and then look twice. Well said. Very well said. Any comments, Dr. Shealy, before we go into a break?
No, I agree totally.
All right, we'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, and we've got Mark the Spark in Pennsylvania. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Vince, and good morning, Dr. Shealy. I appreciate very much. I'm in the presence of two very wise souls, and I very much appreciate your articulateness for the basics of good physical health of our bodies, but also I appreciate you, Vince, because you're challenging us to be on the leading edge of life and be alive and well and happy and productive. And if people would really, really appreciate that in your challenges, I appreciate your challenges. And I understand your frustration in trying to stir people up there locally, because I'm from southern Missouri originally, and I tried to stir people in a good way when I was there, and I found very little receptivity. And it's because it seemed like people were very comfortably numb. The ordeal that I went through, I think we're here in the perfect time actually to wake up to the depths of who we really are as soul beings, and to encourage others to do the same. We have, and for your listeners, I shared with you before, and by the way, it's been a while since I've been able to listen to your show, because what I've been through in the last year and a half, it's just ridiculous, but it's all for a purpose. And so now recently I was able to tap back in to be able to listen to your show. And, so, what we're facing, it seems, is that, this is authoritarianism in our face. But we are the author of our lives, and we need to take back the power of our soul, the integrity of our soul. And they're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at us. And by the way, earlier this summer, I actually caught this coronavirus, whatever. I call it the COVID ghost. And I wasn't afraid of death. I didn't, but I was in very good health, but I ended up getting viral pneumonia, and it was solved pretty quick. My sense of it is they're just using this as a scare tactic, and they're beating the drum. This is psychological warfare. This is actually soul warfare, and they're putting people in a state of, they're confounding and confusing people. What's the reference here? The standard seems to change every other week. I mean, we've got some very intelligent people in science and medical, like Dr. Shealy, and it's just, there's many people that are trying to speak up about the truth, about what's really going on, but yet we the people have given over our media, our media to a group of the enemy, and they're censoring us, and they're misleading us, they're misinforming us, but they sure do beat the heck out of that drum to scare people. And I'm sensitive to this because of what happened to me when I was just turned 21, where I lost my family, and it was a drama, trauma, and tragedy, and I reached out to try to get support, and I had little support, if any, at all. And now, look what's happening. The thing that happened to me when I was younger is now happening. What's happening to me on a micro scale is now happening to all of us on a macro scale. Our families are being destroyed. The enemy is at the gate, and they are not yet in our face. They are not yet using direct force, because they're trying to psychologically hypnotize, mass hypnosis. That's what's going on here. And just so that your listeners also, I think I shared with you, Vincent, and also Dr. Shealy, about my great-great-grandfather having served in the Civil War. He was drafted by Pennsylvania, and I'm not from here, but I'm from Missouri. He ended up out in the Midwest after the war. But anyway, he was a prisoner of war in down in Georgia, one of the worst prisons of the Civil War. He survived.
Andersonville, right? Yeah,
that's correct. And he survived 11 months there. He went through hell. He survived hell. So the thing is, what's going on? I'm telling you what's going on. And see, out of the blue, this was 3.5 years ago, where something said, look up your family. And I was able, before I wasn't able to do all that years ago because we didn't have the internet and it was difficult. But in 4 days, I found out so much about my family history, and it was very encouraging to have found that out. But I think we do have a soul, and I do believe in past lives, Vincent. I know there's several there that they're so deep in the religion they're not into spirituality. It seems like they're in a religion thing, and they want to argue with you about things. But I do, and I know Dr. Shealy embraces the idea that we've been here before, and many of us have been here before. And so it's time for us to wake up and stand up and say no to the evil that's going on. And there is evil, and they want to kill us. They want to kill us.
Mark, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Let me ask Dr. Shealy this first. Dr. Shealy, do you remember being in the studio with me and a couple of other guys? The ladies were downstairs cooking, and it was one of the holidays many years ago. And you mentioned past life regression, and I said, wow, I'm really interested in that. I don't know anything about it. I don't know much about it, but I sure would like to hear more about it. And then one of the guys who was with us was a religious zealot, and he just threw up his arms and just left in frustration with us. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I still find it humorous.
Well, I lost that friend. I mean, right then and there, that was it. And it was never fixed. And it was because I said, I don't know much about it. I'd like to learn more about it. As simple as that. Boom. It was like what I said was sacrilegious. And, and this guy was, he was an infantryman. He was in the military, and I loved him dearly, but boy, there was a great divide at that very second. I wanted to mention that. And, Mark, can you share with us what happened to you as a result of COVID-19? You contracted it. What was it like? You'll be the very first person on the air who's told us what it was like. First person.
Well, basically, what happened at first was I got hold on a second. I'm sorry. I started getting headaches, and I do not get headaches. Okay. And by the way, for people to know, I rarely ever take an aspirin. I don't take drugs to heal. I try to keep my body in good shape and eat good diet, and I learned so much from Dr. Shealy and from you, Vincent, on that matter. But I started getting headaches, and they were severe. And then I lost my appetite. And I was like, what's going on with this? Okay. And several days later, it kind of lifted, and I thought it was okay. Then the next day, 3 to 4 days later, then it hit me again, and I lost my appetite, and my energy was starting to go down. And then it was about a week later that I mean, this stuff took me to my knees. I mean, where I didn't have any energy, and I was dizzy. I had major dizziness. And then that's when they sent me to the hospital, and then they tested me, and they said, well, yeah, you got the COVID. I was like, okay, well, what is this? And then they told me it was viral pneumonia because my lungs had filled up. Now, I had pneumonia when I was a kid, maybe 3 or 4 years old, and but since then I've rarely ever gotten sick at all, not even the flu. Okay. So anyway, then I was in the hospital, and they gave me something called LGG, and I forgot what it's actually is, LGG, and then there's an LGM. They gave me that to me intravenously for a couple of days. It was a drip, and then I started feeling better, and then my appetite started coming back. I was in the hospital for about 8 days, and then they, and by the way, I was asking all along about this process and how it worked and what we're going to do next, and nobody could tell me. It was a mystery. Okay, so then when I was about to leave the hospital and they were going to send me to this quarantine, which was at an elderly care facility, which I'm not elderly, but so I asked them, I said, well, what about the test? Now, they had given me the test when I went to the hospital, so now I'm about to leave the hospital. I said, okay, what about the test? And they go, what test? I go, what test? The test. And they wouldn't test me. They said, no, you don't need to be tested. You'll be okay. All you got to do is quarantine for 2 weeks. You'll be okay. So then I went to quarantine, and what I was still experiencing was dizziness, slight dizziness, while I was in quarantine. So then and the other thing is, we couldn't go outside, we couldn't go for walks, we were sequestered. I could walk down the hall, and which I tried to do as much as I could, but and again, asking about the process and how this works and what's going to happen next, nobody knew. The doctors didn't know. Nobody knew. It's a mystery. So then, before I left that facility, I was there about 2.5 weeks. Then they were going to discharge me, and I said, well, and before they discharged me, they didn't even ask me how I felt, and I was like, well, okay. I said, I'm wondering why you're not asking me how I feel, because I still have dizziness. Oh, you should be okay. Plus, your insurance won't cover your. No, I asked about the test. I said, well, what about the test? And then she goes, well, what test? This is a social worker. I said, what test? I said, the test. Are you going to retest me? oh, no, you don't need that. Plus, your insurance company won't pay for it. Oh, okay. So it ended up that, so then I ended up being discharged. And then a few days, and I still had slight dizziness. Now, I figured it was because I'd been bedridden for almost 5 weeks total. Because prior to it, I was kind of bedridden because I wasn't feeling well, because my energy was low, but yet I wasn't having the extreme dizziness. So anyway, so then I still had slight dizziness, and then I got a major case of dizziness, and I thought it would lift. It's like the dizziness you get when you fly in a plane. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, okay, we're going into a break. And when you're done, I'd love to hear Dr. Shealy's comments. And then we've got Robert in Kansas, who has been on hold for 13 minutes, 14 seconds. Sure. Okay, so let's get Dr. Shealy's comments. Finish up with what your symptoms, and then let's get Dr. Shealy's comments. We'll be right back. We've all heard secondhand of people who have had COVID-19, and we've heard, oh, it's just like the flu or a common cold. This does not sound anything like the common cold. We're talking about hospitalization. And Mark, if you could wrap this up, I'd appreciate it. And I'd like to hear Dr. Shealy's comments, then Robert in Kansas.
Sure thing. I know we're short on time. So basically, I did have heavy duty dizziness for, like you have if you take an air flight and you've got like congestion in your head and you yawn or you, hold your nose and you try to blow out to clear it. And I had not been in a flight. So I was wondering, well, why is that happening? So, I thought, well, this will pass. Well, 5 days later, it was still with me, and it was heavy duty because when I get up out of bed, I mean, the room would spin for like a minute. And, so then I went to the emergency room of the VA, and, they couldn't figure it out. They did several tests, and then they said that I had to be referred to the ear, nose, and throat specialist. Now, here's what's going on with the VA system. They've shut down the VA, because if you don't have COVID, it's a long waiting list to get anything attended to unless it's an emergency. So, I was supposed to have been referred to the ear, nose, and throat specialist. It turns out that my primary care group did not ever call me back, because the only way you can reach them now, you can't really go in there, to the VA. But anyway, so I had no support, and so then I reached out to the Philadelphia Health Department to find out from them about, being tested and why I wasn't retested. And the thing is, here's my take on this. There is some validity to this coronavirus, but I think it's like it's an extreme flu. Okay. But if persons have pre-existing conditions, which takes down their immunity and their ability to, their resiliency to respond and in health, it could hurt them to the point it could kill them.
Let's hear Dr. Shealy's. Let's hear Dr. Shealy's comments. Dr. Shealy?
It reminds me of why I wrote a book, Third Party Rape. Mm-hmm. The medical insurance industry is part of the evil empire. The entire system sucks. That's my major comment.
Yeah.
Dr. Shealy, the IgG test, the IgG IV drip that he got is immune globulin intravenous. So are we using blood products to treat COVID-19? It sounds like that's what we're doing, isn't it?
Well, yeah, nothing's as good as vitamin C IV, but then the system doesn't use it.
Okay, I can tell you that vitamin C IV that I received at Dr. Shealy's, the Myers cocktail, is beyond unbelievable. So if you need an immune system boost, class, that's where it's at. That's my firsthand experience. Mark, would you please call in again? I was so concerned about you for months. I'm so glad you called in, and it sounds like you are on the mend.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. One thing I'd like to say is we've heard about the military-industrial complex. Well, I'll tell you who's doing this stuff. It's big pharma. It's the medical-industrial complex. That's who's coming at us. And Dr. Shealy, I'm sure he would acknowledge that and affirm that, because that's what's going on. It's
third-party rape.
Yeah. So, and on that note, Vincent, I misplaced your number because I had to change to another phone. I'd like to be able to talk to you. I can leave my number with the board op, and if you can
do me this favor. Just send me an email with your phone number, instructor@usaprepares.com.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you very much, Dr. Shealy.
Instructor@usaprepares.com. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Robert in Kansas, I appreciate you holding and for so long. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, Vince. Good morning, Dr. Shealy. I hope that Mark definitely take off the mask, check his B vitamin levels, magnesium, hydration. Dr. Shealy talks about these things, and then move around, sweat out those toxins, stuff like that, because I feel bad for him, but I think he's going to be okay. He sounds good. I wanted to get to what I think the coronavirus COVID-19 is, Vince. It's 4 parts. They're real short. If you let me get to all 4 of them, you'll know what I'm talking about. So they're just one-liners. So COVID-19 is totally fake. Coronavirus is just a common cold. Number 3, they're testing for antibodies and exomes for coronavirus. And number 4 is this is all nonsense to destroy the American economy. And so that's what I think is really going on. Of course, there's sicknesses, and we've always had these things. I'm not trying to downplay anybody's experience or tell them what they went through, but it is. I don't believe it's what they're telling us it is, and it's all a psychological game.
Dr. Shealy, any comments?
Total agreement.
Robert, I really appreciate your call, but my question is, how do you explain Mark the Sparks in Pennsylvania? How do you explain his reaction? Loss of appetite, loss of energy, dizziness, viral pneumonia for 5 weeks. How do you explain that if this is not real? And I think that what we believe here at USA Prepares is this is a real virus. It's debilitating, but it's being manipulated to against us and to take down the economy. Thank you so much for your call. Dr. Shealy, thank you.